Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So Donald Trump has taken a 2.3 percentage lead over Joe Biden due to some new polling and a big poll that came out of left field that was with likely voters. Usually you don't get a likely voter screen this early, but what that does is it attempts to kind of show the voters that are more likely to show up than just registered voters, which, we don't know what demographics are going to be more enthused. But what it does show, and it's from the New York Times, by the way, this is not some pollster that overestimates Republicans. This isn't Rasmussen. I don't really feel like making videos about Rasmussen because their polls do tend to have a right-leaning slant, and it's okay. I mean, it needs to be in the aggregate when you have polls like Quinnipiac that do the opposite and many other polls that typically have the opposite slant, but still, nevertheless, New York Times, they're not the most Trump-friendly pollster, but lately they've been more accurate even when some polls have overestimated Republicans, and we will be talking about that. But what's important to note is Donald Trump having a lead this big, especially with 8 months to go, we're knocking on the door of election season, and he is up big. And with a number of undecideds, that's not all that high. He's in a very, very good shape. And you could look at this. The polls in early March in 2016, they had Hillary winning by 3.4. She won the popular vote by just a little bit over 2, so they underestimated Donald Trump. And then on the Biden side of things, they had Biden up by 5.5, and the final popular vote was Biden by 4 and change. So ultimately speaking, even if the polls are overestimating Trump, we could even say by that much, he'd still win the popular vote, which is unheard of for a Republican in this day and age. And if they're underestimating him by that margin, he would win it by more than what Republicans won by nationally in 2022 in terms of the House generic vote. And what's also incredible is this little tidbit that I found doing some research, because in 2016 and 2020, Trump spent a combined 9 days polling at or above 45%. Keep in mind, he got 46% in 2016, and he got a little bit more than that, but it was still below 47% in 2020. Donald Trump has been polling at or above 45% since September, with little exception. And this is ways away from the election. Usually the numbers for both candidates will go up as you have less undecideds as you get closer. But it doesn't matter. Donald Trump still, he's in the mid to high 40s. And that's unheard of because Trump spent most of 2020 below 45. He spent most of 2016 below 45. And yet Donald Trump has been above 45% for the most part, going all the way back to September. Ironically, what changed was the whole mugshot. When he got the indictment in Georgia, it didn't affect things in a negative way for him at all. And in fact, Donald Trump's margin jumped up to 47.5. He's in a very, very good shape. He's polling at or above 47, let alone 45, for more days than he was polling above 45 by his entire political career. If you want to say, well, the polls are skewed one way or another, I think that that's just a lazy way of analyzing them, because this is a shift. It's not going to be reflected in special election results because a lot of Donald Trump's base is low propensity. He's never been on the ballot against Biden since 2020. So I think that's kind of a lazy way of people trying to cope and justify the fact that the polls are looking good for Trump. And I'm not saying they can't be overestimating him. I mean, we look at the state polls in like Nevada, and it's like, yeah, I don't think he's going to win Nevada by 7.7 percentage points. I don't even think he's going to win Georgia by 6, but do I think he could win the states by, 2 or 3? Yeah, and that would be a massive improvement from 2020, and would basically guarantee his victory when it's all said and done. So this New York Times poll really kind of shocked a lot of people on the internet, because New York Times, their final poll in 2020 had Biden winning the popular vote by 9 points. And we know that didn't happen. But it's important to understand that they kind of have corrected course since then. And this is a pollster that said Republicans would win the generic ballot by 4 points in 2022. That was not off. That was not a ridiculous overestimation. They won the generic ballot by 2.8%. I mean, you could say it was an inefficient distribution. That's why they didn't take as many seats as they possibly could have. Fine, but still, that poll did its job. It was only off by 1%. They were one of the only pollsters in their final poll that had John Fetterman beating Dr. Oz by the margin he beat Dr. Oz by. They had Fetterman up by 5, and a lot of people at the time discounted it, including myself, but they were right and we were wrong. They also had the Arizona governor's race tied when a lot of polls had Lake up by a few points. They had the Nevada Senate race tied when a lot of pollsters had Adam Laxalt with a sizable lead of a few points. They had Lombardo winning, though, and Lombardo did outrun Laxalt, and they also had Raphael Warnock winning by the margin that he ended up winning by, at least in the final runoff. So when you look at the New York Times poll, they actually have a pretty decent accurate record in terms of 2022 when a lot of other pollsters were overestimating Republicans. So you really can't use that as an excuse, especially when the national poll was accurate. And let's say the poll is overestimating Trump nationally by a couple points. It still does not matter at the end of the day. Donald Trump would still win in the Electoral College, even if this Quinnipiac poll is accurate, which I think was a push poll because they also had Haley up by a few points, the same poll they had Trump behind, but still, that's beside the point. Even if Biden won the popular vote by 4, Trump could still win in the Electoral College, and that is true. And these polls also don't take into account RFK Jr., Cornel West, Jill Stein, all three of which seem to be taking more votes away from Joe Biden than they would take away from Donald Trump. But still, let's look into it further. Donald Trump, you hear about, the whole Republican exodus, the primary problem, which again, a lot of the voters who are not voting for Trump in the primary, A, will vote for him at the end of the day, B, might stay home, and you have a lot of Democrats on the other side that will do the same regarding Biden. Or C, they are crossing over, voting in the Republican primary in a lot of these open primaries. We had a closed caucus in the state of Idaho today, and Donald Trump won with like 85% of the vote. He got close to like 90% in Missouri in that caucus. And those numbers are more reflective of Republicans at large nationwide. If Michigan was a closed primary, Donald Trump probably wins, with 80% of the voters. So, and a lot of those in a closed primary who are not initially backing Trump, a lot of them will back Trump at the end of the day. Some might stay home, but then you have the whole Biden problem. His turnout in primaries is much lower. A lot of these uncommitted voters in certain places, a lot of them are going to be very likely to stay home as well. And Biden's not getting the margin Trump's getting, especially in regards to Michigan and the raw vote totals. That's not a good sign, especially in a place like Macomb County. But still, this poll has Donald Trump winning 97% of his voters 4 years ago, whereas Joe Biden's only winning 83% of his 2020 voters. 10% of them are now saying they back Trump, whereas you're not going to see as many Trump-Biden voters as some people think. You might have some Trump voters that are disillusioned and stay home, but you probably have like 2 Biden voters that are going to do that for every Trump voter. And this account right here did the math that says if Trump got 97% of his 2020 vote, he's at 71 million. Biden getting 83% of his puts him at 67 million, which is in line with what the polls have to say regarding the popular vote and exactly what they're showing, because that would mean that Trump is going to win the popular vote by a couple of percentage points, which would make sense regarding the shift in overall turnout. And it's true. Democrats are in for a lot of issues if they can't correct course. Dave Wasserman, of all people, he is a member of the election mafia. He's, written a lot of articles for 538 and Nate Plastic's company back in the day. What did he say? He said the polls were not off from the mark in terms of some of these recent elections. Arguably, the Biden margin was off. I kind of disagree with that. But still, the polls would have to change significantly or be very wrong for Biden to win in November. And this is true. It's not just Rasmussen or Harvard Harris that's showing this. It's every single pollster except Quinnipiac, which is the outlier. And they've always been an outlier. And even then, in their next poll, I wouldn't be shocked to see it be tied or the margin narrows or Trump's winning it. That poll was from weeks ago. But still, you look at Harris X. A lot of these pollsters that were accurate nationally in 2022, because the polls actually were accurate nationally, they are showing Donald Trump in a very, very good position. But on top of that, you have to look at the crosstabs too. They will say, well, actually, the crosstabs are showing some wonky results. Therefore, the poll is possibly inaccurate. And this is a cope that we see from a lot of people, and it's not true. Polls usually overestimate Republicans with some demographics, like black voters, for example, and underestimate them with other voters, for example, like whites with a college degree and whites without a college degree. And you look at this, and what does the poll show? It shows that Trump is doing better with younger voters. He's doing better with women. He's in a very good position regarding minority voters, where he's winning the Hispanic vote. And like, do I anticipate him to go out there and win all these demographics that usually vote Democrat? No, but just because polls overestimate certain like Republicans of those demographics does not necessarily indicate that the poll is wrong to begin with. I mean, I saw somebody claim that the poll was wrong because 60% of the polling respondents didn't have a college degree. And like, that's the identical amount of the electorate that we saw in 2020 that did not have a college degree. So overall, a lot of people are just these armchair analysts. They don't know what's going on. But the bottom line is Trump is in a very good position, whether you want to overanalyze the crosstabs or not, which I'm not doing. But still, you did see gains in the midterms from certain demographics like Hispanics for Republicans, despite a lot of like the Trump voting Hispanics in South Texas being more like low propensity. They're probably going to come out in a fuller force for him in 2024, and you're going to see the Rio Grande Valley continue to get redder and redder. That's going to help keep Texas a red state this election cycle, possibly the next one. But also, I think he's going to, turn a corner in some suburbs in the entire country, depending on the suburb, because Biden is just all that unpopular, and that is true. And you're looking at this. Donald Trump is in a very good shape. He only led 5 polls out of a couple hundred the entire 2020 election cycle. But now he leads 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 polls currently in the aggregate. Biden has kind of been the one that's only led like a handful of polls going all the way back to like October. And this is an issue. Biden could very well try to course correct. He's got a long way, but the voters aren't buying his pitch on the economy. They're not buying his pitch on immigration whatsoever. It's basically going to be an orange man bad campaign. Try to like drum up the identity politics. It's going to backfire. His campaign is like feeling more like Hillary Clinton's back in 2016 at this point than even Biden's 2020 campaign, where he kind of benefited by staying away from the spotlight. But that's not the case anymore. Donald Trump's favorable rating is increasing, actually. It's much higher than Biden's at this point. That's a major, major issue, and it proves that Biden doesn't have a lot to run on. There's really no way that he can go out there and beat Donald Trump unless people get complacent, unless it's mechanics once again. So I encourage people to get out and vote come November. Bring people with you. That's all that matters. How many ballots can we get in the ballot box by Election Day? Donald Trump has to win that battle. Messaging and all these other things, they're important, but that's the most important thing. It's the scoreboard, because that's how you take power. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.